Leah Chatham has worked in healthcare and health technology marketing for 25 years. She runs U.S. marketing for a global AI company. During that time, she's also served as her father's gallerist, and just this summer, she oversaw the publication of the new edition of Russell's Dark Waters, which was a beautiful edition. Leah.
And that is how you make money as a writer. And I know that because I have published more articles and written more than any of the people that we've talked about tonight. But nobody knows my name, and I make way more money than Marketing, folks, I'm telling you, it's the way to go. And I just want to say thank you to Bob Dattila, who's at the back of the room, because he's the one who told me when I was in college, or just after college, I just moved back. And Bob and I were sitting at the bar at the guest house, and Bob had just won his usual, like, couple $100 playing the Keno on the machine, and like he did every night. And he said, "What are you going to do now?" I said, "I was thinking about being a writer." And he said, "That is a terrible idea. Nobody makes money as a writer, and you should definitely not do that." So thank you, Bob, for sending me in a better direction. And I love that man very, very much. Not for that reason, but just in general, because he's Bob and he's something special. So I'm guessing after this last 6 months or so, some of you are sort of sick of seeing me up here. I was trying to come up with something a little more interesting this time. So I actually made notes, which I did not do the last few times that I got up and gave one of these talks. I just sort of winged it. So this time, because we're talking about the anthology, which is lovely, that Jamie has put together, because we have all these wonderful people here, and because we're sort of memorializing a lot of the other wonderful people, I thought I would actually share a little bit about what some of them had to say about my dad, instead of maybe me talking about my dad. So a long time ago, Jim Harrison said, "What are we to do with or say about Chatham? He has the soul of a great waif, and his work doesn't belong comfortably anywhere. Certainly not within the confines of postmodern art, which strikes one as in permanent diaspora. Everyone within the critical apparatus points in a different direction or is building a different birdhouse, none of which has room for our waif." He went on to say in another piece that he wrote about Dad later, "Our first meeting must have been in the summer of 1970. We were brought together by Tom McGuane, whose obsession with the sporting life caused a dozen lasting friendships for a dozen friends in Key West and Montana. How to describe the man who is an artist without sounding like an imponderably sentimental jerk-off? Chatham is a pig, a glutton, an alcoholic, occasional dope fiend, a cook of the highest caliber, a faultless wine expert. He looks like a geek, is terribly out of shape, often lazy and irascible, runs from trouble, my favorite psychiatrist, though the benefits have been limited, and most outrageous sex maniac I have ever known. A manic depressive, a lousy husband and provider, a lout, an incredible angler, a financial wimp and swindler, as many in this room know. Kind, generous, curiously noble, an implausibly faithful friend. And a point of this occasion, a potentially great artist. The potential betimes disappearing, leaving a great artist standing revealed. I love his landscapes for the same reason I love Neruda's poems, which are a waterfall against the brain pan, or Hokusai's waves, which have been beating for 3 centuries, or Modigliani's nudes, which are the nudes a god would paint out of lust and sorrow, the colors of Turner and Gauguin, which put governments and religion to shame. As Holy Blake said, we are led to believe a lie when we see not through the eye, or better yet, when Kafka said that a book should serve as an axe for the frozen sea within us. Chatham's landscapes do that for me. I wrote this at high noon and without a drink. Another very good friend who was a lovely person was Dad and my mom's good friend until Adnan. She was also a poet and an artist. She was Lebanese and educated in France and spent her life living across France, Lebanon, and the United States. She was a brilliant, beautiful human being. And what she had to say was, Russ Chatham was not, and is probably not, a painter in the usual sense. He is inhabited by the spirit of painting. If he were painting rather than writing this diary, he might make paintings of enormous fish caught in Florida, or of big boats sweltering, because he is also a champion hunter of the creatures of the sea. He is rather close in temperament to the fierce icon makers who were not making objects but were expressing their involvement with the divine. He is a spiritual battle, hidden behind some cynical or desperate look, according to the hour of the day or the city he happens to be crossing. He must be dead serious when nobody watches, because I somehow know he approaches painting with reverence. He is not a classicist or a romantic painter. He is not to be labeled or explained. I read his singularity in his paintings and also simultaneously in our age and in our attachment to life and to our bitterness, in the sense of knowledge and of total questioning, in our interest in detail and our desire for a space in expansion. Chatham is a medium for his age, and in the history of American art, he will be recognized for what he is. A visionary whose vision is reality. Ooh, sorry. Later, one of our good friends, Jim Fergus, also wrote about Dad. In fact, he wrote a few articles about Dad, and he came to Livingston, and Dad taught him how to fly fish. And we all became good longtime friends. And this is the first time that he was alone with him here in Livingston and writing about that experience and his time with him. After about 15 minutes in the company of artist Russell Chatham at the Wrangler Bar in Livingston, Montana, Bob Burns, the owner, presents me with a styrofoam liquor display case containing 8 small airline-sized bottles of different brands. Now, I can tell you this is true because Bob gave me one of those almost every week through my entire childhood. It's an expression of his love and devotion. I don't know what he thought I was going to do with those, but we would have these dinners at Deep Creek, and my dad would say, Leah, go get that thing that Bob gave you when we were down at the Wrangler the other day. We're out of booze. And I would bring it down, and they would sort of put it around the table. Everybody would grab a bottle, and that's what they would drink for the rest of the night. Handy. Who gives a 10-year-old? I mean, I don't know. But it's a question that will live forever in my mind. A gift from the Wrangler Bar. The Wrangler Bar. He repeats once, so that no possible spelling mistakes can be made. The gesture is, of course, a transparent one, as he knows. I'm here to write a story on Chatham. Nevertheless, journalistic integrity aside, let me say this. There are many good bars in Livingston, and in the course of my stay there with Russell Chatham, I saw most of them. But the Wrangler is the finest. I think there's many people in this room who can attest to that. Yet there is another motive behind Bob Burns' generosity. Chatham is his friend. And one thing which manifested itself this night in town, and which would provide a pattern for the rest of my visit, is that Russell Chatham is universally loved, protected, even revered. All weekend, people would take me aside and assure me of this. Russell Chatham, they will whisper, is the finest guy who ever lived. The sweetest guy in the world, they will say. It is not that he is a famous artist and has amassed a coterie of art groupie friends. He is not famous, says Dan Thurman, in a tone of voice which suggests that there would be something very unsavory about that. He is just a friend. I'm just going to interject here to say, when I asked Dan Thurman why he only had 2 fingers, when I was also 10 years old, he stuck my hand in his mouth, bit down really hard, and said, "Let me show you." Woo, Livingston! Yeah! All right. Actually, Chatham is not famous. Though his star has begun to rise, he has painted in near total obscurity and poverty for over 20 years, and he freely admits that he still has no reputation whatsoever in the art world. Truth is, he can't even get a date. Well, that's not true. Later that day, Jim goes on to say, "We were driving out to Chico Hot Springs for dinner. Russell Chatham's," now this really is in here, I'm not making this up, "Russell Chatham's beautiful 10-year-old daughter, Leah, from his second failed marriage, is in the back seat. She lives with her mother in San Diego and spends summers with her father. Daddy isn't exactly Pablo Picasso," she informs me as the conversation turns to art. Now, I'm just going to say, to be fair, I don't think that Picasso could paint dusk any more than I think that Russ could paint Guernica. So, I don't know that that was wrong necessarily. People recognize him in his fishing hat or his cooking hat, but not in his painting hat. Clearly, I just wasn't that impressed. Several other friends of Dad's over the years wrote about him, included him in stories. He is one of the reasons we have Jimmy Buffett's Livingston Saturday Night. He is part of Tom Robbins' legacy as a character in Skinny Legs and All, and in Even Cowgirls Get the Blues. Some of Tom's books are dedicated to Dad, as are books by many other people. Tom goes on to talk about Dad as the man and the legend, and the reason that he waxes poetic and thinks about what it means to be an artist today. It's not all serious. Dad was good friends with Hunter S. Thompson, as some of you may know. Hunter is not a serious person, is what I would sort of say. And back in the 80s, they had a bit of a rivalry for playing jokes on each other, like practical jokes. And in this particular instance, a piece was published in the San Francisco Chronicle that said, "At this point in the editorial process, Dr. Thompson was tragically interrupted by a telephone call regarding the horrible death of his longtime friend and spiritual advisor, Russell Chatham, the famous Montana artist. Thompson went immediately into seclusion after hearing the news, and we were forced to suspend publication of part 4 of his long-awaited classic, Jelly Bean and the Night Manager. The saga will continue whenever Dr. Thompson is able to conquer his grief and write professionally again. Close friends say he's feeling fine, but doubts remain in the journalistic community about Thompson's ability to shrug off the shock of Chatham's ghastly death. First report said the artist was fly fishing in a river near his home when he was accidentally hooked by a trolling boat and dragged away into deep water. Then stabbed to death by members of the boating party who reeled him in and gaffed him like a big catfish. They said, unaware we were slaughtering a famous human being. Meanwhile, at Thompson's crude and disturbing log home in Woody Creek, his crafty executive counselor, Seames Luckett, stunned a hastily called press conference by confirming that Dr. Thompson will be the formal executor of Chatham's estate and sole trustee of a bizarre handwritten scroll of personal bequeathments by the artist long known as profoundly eccentric. and a hillbilly dilettante who somehow accumulated great wealth. Thompson's fee alone as executor, now God, if this was only true, will be 22% or 22 million, whichever is greater. The next day, reports of pain of Russell Chatham's death are greatly exaggerated. It was reported Monday in Hunter Thompson's San Francisco column that Chatham, whose painting career started in Marin, died in a freak fishing accident. But the famous Western landscapist, a fanatical fisherman who now lives in Paradise Valley, Montana, was safe in Seattle on Monday. When told that his old friend had written a premature notice of his death, Chatham said, "He is supposed to be in charge of my publicity campaign, and I am afraid he is not taking that job very seriously." And I will say, this is something nobody knows about me. I often think about people, things, and memories that, as they are attached to songs. And so I tend to cry a lot in the car when songs come on because I associate them with sort of certain things. So when the leader of the band or Landslide come on, I sob like a baby, and my daughter's like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "Oh, the leader of the band is tired, his eyes are getting old, his blood runs through my instruments, and his song is in my soul." I mean, I really get into it. And there's a song my daughter plays that's new by an artist, Declan McKenna. It's called Brazil. And every time she plays it, I think of Dad, and I'm saying it because it is this like hillbilly thing. But basically, the lyrics of the song are, he's an old man who lives up a river with 6 cars and a grizzly bear. So, hillbilly, you're too right about that. We're almost done. So, he also talked a lot about himself. He wrote a lot of pieces, did a lot of interviews, talked to a lot of people. And I think the things that kind of stand out to me the most as we sort of come to the end of this and wrap this up are really, as we think about things like this, the Arts and Lecture Series and Elk River and this community of artists and art and writing, is that you don't have to be somebody who's trained or who's studied or, anybody. Now, don't say anything, Bob. Anybody actually can be a writer or an artist, or, my daughter wants to be a photographer and make a living and be successful. And he talked a lot about being self-taught, right? He said, later, I broadened my own education by traveling to see more complete range of American and European painting. I also saw and studied stupendous works during the Sung Dynasty in China. I learned by looking, the way that a writer must learn by reading. And he talked a lot about that experience and how important it is to go out and see art and read and be out in the world around people. So, you may not know this, but my dad has a Starbucks cup. So, it used to be at Starbucks would put quotes by famous people on all their cups. And
I know.
we have a bunch of them. So, this is cup number 184 in the Starbucks edition of cups. And this is what my dad said. My father said being an artist was the shortest road to the poorhouse, claiming that real work is something you don't like. I ignored him through oppositional behavior, later reasoning that only an idiot sets out to find the poorhouse, not to mention devote himself to something he doesn't love. Instead, I discovered an interesting back road to the unknown, and deliberately without a safety net. And I think, he wrapped up one of the things that he kind of wrote about himself in one of his books by saying, 25 years after taking up this desperate line of work professionally, it appears this work is fulfilling its function, which is simply to add a measure of interest and dimension to people's lives in an almost subliminal way, by inhabiting their walls just as a spirit might inhabit a gloomy doorway. And there is nothing in the world more desirable than a friendly ghost in the house to preserve a sense of the past, give hope for the future, and most of all, perhaps, keep you company at the times when you need it most. Which I think is really what art and writing are all about, right? Things you connect with and keep in your space that bring you joy and stay with you even when you're alone. And that, he definitely had a belief in the importance of the arts. And he said in the piece, the last part of the piece that Rick wrote, he said, if the world is now greedy, the artist must be generous. If there is war and hate, he must be peaceful and loving. If the world is insane, he must offer sanity. And if the world is becoming a void, he must fill it with his soul. I think, and I'm just going to tell you that I have a note here today that says, either end it there or you can say something political. Jamie's like, sit down. Okay. I don't know if this is political. What I will say is, this is definitely not a great time in the world, in the United States, for art, for writing, for science, for all the things that bring real truth and meaning to people. And I think that would have absolutely broken his heart, because we need those things. We are lucky here in this town that we have those things here all the time in this way. But in this time, those are things we need to fight for, because they are being taken away in many, many places. A 14-year-old girl who goes to school in Belgrade told me they have no art programs in the Belgrade schools. None at all. How lucky are we? I just, it breaks my heart. It is worth fighting for that. It's worth standing up and, putting your money where your mouth is, or putting your time where your mouth is, or showing up at events like this. It matters. It is important. And I think it is worth, everyone finding the piece of that matters to them. Because that is what he would have done. He would have started a press with no money and no way to pay people. He started a restaurant with no money and no way to pay people. He started a gallery, he started a print house, he started a lot of things because he really genuinely believed that people like Rick and Gretel and Earl and all these people who we know who are kind of the corner and fabric of the artistic community here, that they were important. So I would just ask, without trying to be too political, I would just ask that everybody sort of keep showing up and keep talking about how important that is, because it matters. And it will keep mattering. It has mattered for 2,000 years, or 4,000 years, or, go back to Tepe, it's like 7,000 years. It has mattered. It has mattered in places where people ate berries and wore fur, It matters. So keep showing up and keep telling other people that it's important. It matters.